Hi everyone, welcome back to Crochet Rocks. My name's Tracy, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this cute flower square. Now these are made with the popcorn stitch and they sit up away from the square, kind of proud, and that's one of the things I like about it, how chunky it is. Plus it's not exactly lots of holes, which is another thing I really like about them. I'm just going to show you how to make this square this time, but I do have rather a few projects in mind for this design. That's what it looks like on the back, and you're kind of going into the back of some of these stitches. I'll show you as we go. Now this is suitable for a beginner. I know it looks complicated, but I don't think there's anything here that a beginner couldn't tackle. And for this I'm using 5 different colours. I've got a lemon for the centre, and then a peach colour for the next row. I've got a darker pink, and then a very pale pink, and then white. But you can make these in any colour scheme that you like. These are all a DK3 weight yarn. But you can use any yarn that you want, just to make sure that you go up with the corresponding crochet hook size. Now for this one I'm using a 4mm because I do want it to be nice and tight and snug without gaps. So you need a darning needle and a pair of scissors. But if you're quite creative when you're making these, you won't really have that many ends to sew in, because you can actually work them in as you go around. There's not a lot of holes, so you can easily disguise it. So I'm going to take my first colour. I've got some of my lemon here that's left over from before. So now the start of this is made with a magic loop. Now that's not as difficult as you may think. I know a nice easy way. But if you'd rather make it with the chain, you can. But obviously I don't really want to have the hole in the middle. So how I do my magic loop is very, very simple. I just take my yarn and I make a loop. Then I get my hook and I put it inside and bring the yarn through. And then I just do a chain and I cinch it down a little. Now I've made my magic loop. It's very, very easy. That's all there is to it. So if you didn't quite catch that, then by all means just go back and watch that again. Or you could just do the chain start, but I prefer to do it that way. Now I'm going to do 6 UK double crochets, which are single crochets in the US. Now I'm going to zoom in just a little to try and make sure I don't go off camera, because it's easy to do that when I'm zoomed. So how I'm going to do that is just go into the centre of the loop. You're kind of working over this knot area. It looks like a loose knot. And pull up the loop. So go into the loop, into the ring, pull up a loop. You've got 2 on your hook. Yarn over and pull through both of them. I'll show you one more time. You go into the centre of that ring, yarn over and pull up a loop. Yarn over and through both of them. So that's 2. Now if you want to make this smaller, you can just pull on this end. Don't make it too small, but if you have it too loose, then you could lose the end. So I'm going to do 6 altogether. I've done 2. I'm just going to carry on until I've got 6. Okay. Move that tail. It's my last one. Now I get a hold of this here and just give it a little pull, and it closes that up nicely. So now I need to slip stitch into my first stitch. Now if you get confused as to where that is, all you need to do is count these V's. Not the loop there, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this one here is our first stitch. That's why I like to cinch my chain type, because then you don't mistake it for a stitch. So I just put my hook in and slip stitch through both loops. And now I'm going to do 2 chain, and I'm going to go into the same stitch that I've just slip stitched into, and I'm going to do 4 UK trebles in the same stitch, because these 2 chain count as my first stitch. So I want 5 altogether. And to do a UK treble, which is a double crochet in the US, we yarn over, we go into that same stitch and move that tail, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. I'll show you again. Yarn over into the same stitch we've just been in, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. So we now have 3 stitches because these 2 chain are our first. We're going to do 2 more in the same stitch, so we have 5 altogether. I'm just going to pull that out slightly. Now what we're going to do is we're going to insert our hook into the top of our 2 chain. There's our first chain, and here's our second chain. Now you don't have to worry about which loops you're going into, and I'm going to put my loop back on the hook and just pull it through that first stitch. I don't want to make it tight because I want to see that little loop. If you see there, we want this circle to stay intact, so I'm just going to do 1 chain, and I'm going to do that in every single stitch all the way round. So I'm going to yarn over, go into the next one and do 5, just as before. Obviously that time we had the 2 chain counting as a stitch, so this time we need to make 5. And if you can't remember where it is, just pull it up and you can see. If you get to, sometimes you can't see where you've been. When you've got that many stitches, it can sometimes be difficult to see where they are. So now this is our first stitch here. We're going to insert the hook, put our loop back on our hook and pull that through. Not tight, and do a chain. So now we've made 2 popcorns, and we're going to go into the next one and do exactly the same again. We're going to do 5, and then we're going to go into that first stitch. You can see it there. If you can't see it, just pull this down and count the V's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there we are. We go into that stitch, put our loop back on the hook, and pull it from behind and do a chain. Oops, doesn't help to pulled it out. There we go. Mistakes happen to us all. Put that back and do our chain. So this is what it's looking like. We've got our popcorns. So I've got 3. Now at the end of this I shall have 6. So I'm going to pause the video and I will carry on all the way around until I get back to here, and then I will have 6 of these, and I'll come back and show you what to do next. Okay, I'm on my very last one now. So I'm just going to bring this one round, do my last chain, and now we need to join it to this one. So if you turn it over, you can see there's some vertical stitches along this edge. You just slip stitch into there and then turn it over, snip off your yarn. And most of these rounds we end off of each round. It is just so much easier. So I'm just going to pull that through, and this is how it looks. We've got like the first little flower, and I didn't pull this one as tight as I could have. Some of these I've pulled really tight, but they do work open just a little bit anyway as you're working them. So now we bring in our peach colour and we join it in between any one of these flowers, petals, whatever you want to call them. So we just, as you can see, if you pull them apart, you can see a gap there. So we put our hook in and just bring our new colour through. And how I join it is just to bring through a loop, hold both ends of my yarn, so my working yarn and my tail, and I make one chain and cinch it down a little, drop the tail, and then I start with my 2 chain, and now we're going to do 4 more in that same space between the 2 popcorns, just as we did before, exactly the same. Now we've got an obstacle in the way of this stitch here, so sometimes it is quite easy to catch those stitches, so do be a little bit careful. If you have to twist it slightly as you're working just to get past them, then please do. So now we've gone in between those two, now we have to go into it, and if you look inside these, there's kind of looked like a little curly. Where we've been, it's sort of round. That was the end of our 5th one, and this was the start. So I pop my hook back in, and we've got to go into here. Now if you put your hook in, you can go through the back of the stitch, so you can't really see it from this side, but if you turn it over, you're just going through here. So it's quite bulky, but don't worry, it's meant to be. So we yarn over, and we're going to go through there, yarn over and pull up our stitch. Now if you're, like I said, if you're canny, you can go over your yarn tails as well. I went over my tail already. So, and I always start, I begin at the opposite end to where I've ended off, so that way I only have to work over one tail at a time. So I'm going to do my 5 in the middle of this popcorn. So as you're looking down it, it's like looking down the barrel of a gun, as they say. So let's just do our 5, and we're going to make our popcorn in the top of this one. Being careful though not to accidentally hook any of this here and splitting the stitches. There's lots of obstacles in this, that's the only drawback. So we just pull that through and do our chain, and as you can see there's the circle that we've created, and that's where we just have been through into that previous popcorn. So there's our gap between the next 2. We're going to go straight in between there, and I'm going to make sure that I carry on working over this tail. You don't have to if it's confusing for you. You can sew them all in, but I'd much rather work over them if I can. And so I'm just going to do another one in between. Move that out of the way. I think that was 4. There's the 5. Put it out a little bit so it doesn't disappear on me. Go into my first one. Put my hook back on. My loop back on, should I say. And do my chain. So this is how it's looking. We've got in between, in the top, in between, and now we're going in the top again. And we're going to do that all the way around. So whereas we had 6 in our previous row, we'll have 12 when we get to the end of this one. And so I'm just going to go exactly the same as before, into the back of this stitch, all the way through, and pull up my loop. Sometimes it's very difficult to find your route in without pulling up more than you bargain for, like splitting the yarn. If that happens, just come out and go back in again. So we're going to carry on with our 5. And as I'm doing it, I kind of twist it out of the way of picking up any stray bits. Move the tail out of the way. Don't need to be confusing. I think this is number 4. As you go further and further into this, it gets a little bit more congested, and it's sort of harder to miss the stitches, but if you're careful, you can do it. So that's how it's looking. You just keep going in between, in the top, in between, in the top. Now it's very easy to miss going in the between ones. One of mine that I made, at the end I counted, I had 13, so I managed to get an extra one somewhere along the line. So just make sure that you're going in between and in the top, and at the end of this row, you have 12 of these this colour pom-poms, pom-poms, whatever you want to call them. So I'm going to carry on, go all the way round, and I'll meet up with you when I get to this end. Okay, so I'm all the way at the end. So all I've got to do is look again, and you'll find that vertical piece and just slip stitch into it, cinch it down and end off, and that's what it looks like. So now we just get our next colour in, and we'll join it at the opposite side. So in between any one, as long as it's not the same. And you can, only work over one tail at a time if you're going to work over the tails. That didn't work out. Right. So I grab both my tail and my working yarn, do my chain and cinch it down, drop the tail, and start again. My 2 chain, and I'm going to do my 5. Sorry, I'm off the camera. I'm zoomed in, and I forgot that I was zoomed. So now I've joined this colour, I'm going to do exactly the same as before. Working in between. How many have I done? I think that was 4. There's my 5. Working in between and in the top of each one. So as we started with 6, and by the end of the second row we had 12, we're doubling each time. So at the end of this one, we'll have 24. And it does start to get quite bushy. And that's when it's very, very easy. If you look, you can see there's an awful lot of stitches, awful lot of popcorns. So it is quite easy to snag into the other stitches. But as long as you carry on going in between and then in the top, then if you turn it, you can see it sort of curls over on itself like a little cup, and so it's quite easy to disguise the yarn tails. So now we need to go into the top, and this is our little kind. It sort of looks like a little circle if you look. You can see. So we're going straight in. I'm working over the tail. It does get easy to actually catch the yarn on and pull it through when you don't want it. You just have to kind of wiggle it a little bit. So you're twisting out of the way of the tails and the yarn so it doesn't split. So there's 5. Back to the start, and it's just the same as before. So now we're going in between. So make sure that you just go in between, in the top, in between and in the top, and at the end of this you'll have your 24 popcorns. See, it's not difficult, it's just fiddly. And so I don't think there's anything here that a beginner couldn't master. It's just, as I say, a little bit fiddly when you're not used to tension, keeping your tension the same and seeing where your stitches are. It just needs a little bit of practice with that sort of thing, and then you're ready to tackle something like this. So now we've got with it in between, so we're now got to go into here. So I'm going to pause the video again, and I'm going to go in each one, in between, and then in the top again, and every one around until I've got my 24, and I'll come back to you. Right, so I'm just on my very last one now. And I'm going to attach that at the back there. Did I get in the right? This yarn's a little thinner than the rest. It's funny how sometimes that happens, even though I'm using, most of it is the same make. It is, we are. Right, so that's all done. I just feel like these really remind me of rosettes. You know, when you have a gymkhana or something, it just reminds me, or politicians use rosettes as well. But that's what it looks like. It kind of puts me in mind of rosettes. So now we're going to make it into a square, and it is ever so simple how to do it. So we're going to join it anywhere you like. So just pick in between, anywhere. Doesn't really matter. And we're going to join the yarn exactly the same way as before by going over there and cinching it down and just dropping the tail. So this time I'm going to do 2 chain, and I'm going to do 1 UK treble, which is a US double, in that same space. Just the 2 there. So we've got 2 stitches, the 2 chain and 1 stitch. And now that is half a corner. So in the next space between the next 2 pom-poms, can't get my mouth around the word pom-pom at the moment, I don't know why. I'm going to do 2 half trebles, which is a UK term, or half double in the US. So this is where we are now. So we're going to go in between this one, and we're going to yarn over, go into the space, yarn over and pull up the loop, just as we would if we were doing the treble. And we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 of them. I'm walking over the tail as well. I'm going to do 2 of those. Now in the next one, I'm going to do 2 UK doubles, which are US single crochets. It's just 2. So in between each of these popcorns, you just have 2 stitches, regardless of what it is. So there's 1. This is the second lot. And this will be the third. So just look at it for a moment. Now this is half a corner. So as you can see, it's straightening because we've got our half trebles and then our 3 lots of our UK doubles or US singles. We now need to start building it back up again. So I'm going to do, in the next one, I'm going to do the 2 half trebles again, or half doubles for the US. I'm trying to part that and get in there. Now in the next one, I'm going to do a full corner this time. So that is 2 UK treble crochets, which are US double crochets, 1 chain and 2 more in the same space. And that will make our corner. And then all of this side here is our repeat. So we're going to do the 2 half treble, half doubles in there. And then our 3 lots of our UK double or US single. There's 1. 2, 3, and now we're building it back up to the corner again, so we're going to do the 2 half double or half treble, whichever side of the pond you're on, or whichever. No, that didn't go in the right place. It's quite quite sort of puffed up now. It depends as well, I think, not just on what side of the pond you live on, but which terms you learnt with. So that was my half trebles, wasn't it? I think so, yes. So in this one now is our full corner again. Get that towel out of the way. That's it. Right, I'm going to pull that out and show it to you now. We've got a full side, and as you can see, it's starting to square up nicely. There's still a smidge of a curve, but it's starting to really square up. The next round completely squares that circle. That tail is bugging me, and it's about time for it to get worked over anyway. So I'm starting off with my half trebles or half doubles, according to whatever you call them. And then going along with my 3 lots of these, working over the tail to get rid of that. I always work over tails whenever I can, but sometimes you have to, even though you've worked over it a little bit, you still have to sew the last bit in, and I sometimes like to go back on myself with it. So this one I've got almost at the corner again, so we're starting to build up. Just feel where you got to go into, because like I said, it's a bit, I wouldn't say congested with stitches, but it's quite packed. So, you know, you don't want to be going into the wrong part. You won't see it until after you've finished it, which is always the way. We're at the corner there. And that's coming along nicely. So I'm going to carry on and do this last little piece, and I shall come back to you when I get back to the corner. Okay, so I've made it all the way back, and now all I need to do is finish off this corner. So I'm going to do 2 more of the UK trebles or US doubles in there. Now we've got this gap. So what I do, because I'm going to be doing quite small stitches into the next round, I don't want a large gap. So I'm just going to go into the top chain. There's the stitch and there's the chain. So I'm going to go into the chain, the top of my chain, get in. And I'm going to pull up a loop, but instead of pulling through it like a slip stitch, I'm going to do a yarn over and pull through both like it's a double crochet. So then I'm going to do a chain and cinch it, and now I'm going to do 2 half trebles into the middle. So there's my 2. That I've got 3 there. That doesn't look right at all. Did I make a mistake? No, probably went into the wrong chain. Let's do that again. Just the way it looked, I think. So I'm going to go into the center of here and do 2 half trebles. Now 3 half trebles is my corner, but I just want to do 2 because I want to finish right in the dead center of the corner. And if you do 2, then you do finish. Just sorry, I was pulling out some yarn. Now I'm going to do 1 in every single stitch along. There's my, just as simple as that. A half treble or half double in every single stitch, but making sure that you go into those kind of top 2 stitches, because depending on what stitch you're working on, they may look different. You know, sometimes if you catch my drift, you're going into the top 2, so you have both loops on, but rather than going into the gap of the stitch, into the space. So just 1 in each all the way along until we get to the corner. If I go ahead of you, just pause it please and catch up with me. Right, so now I'm back at the corner, and what I'm going to do is just 3 in the corner. And then 1 in each one, but not forgetting that stitch there. You might have to pull it aside slightly to see it. 1. See, if you look there, that one looks different. That's what I meant. So make sure that you don't go into that big space, but you go into the top 2, so you've got that one underneath it. That's what I was trying to explain. Some of them, because it was a UK treble, US double, or a half treble, they have slightly different, the way the tops of the stitches look slightly different. Okay, so as you can see, we're now squaring that off completely. So I'm going to carry on all the way round, 3 in the dead corner, and I will carry on 1 in each, 3 in the corners until I get back to here, and then I'll show you what to do next. That was my that was my elbow. Sorry about that. I'm sure you probably heard it. So now I'm almost back to the end. I've just got this last stitch to do, and now I'm back at the corner, and I'm going to do my last one in that corner and then slip stitch into the next one. So that's there. Now I'm going to end off this colour and start again, but the reason I usually do my corner like in my beginning corner like that is if that was going to be your last round, and it could easily be because you don't need to end with the white colour. This is now in the dead centre of that corner, and so you could have left a nice long tail to sew it, or it just looks better if you are adding another row, or when you're sewing it. It is so much easier when this is in the dead centre of the corner. But I end mine with a nice little white row. And let me just move this yarn out of the way. But that's why, if you ever wonder, when I do my tutorials, that I end my corners that way. I never always used to, but I do now. I find it a little bit nicer. Just perfected it a little bit. So this round's very easy. We just join at a corner, any corner you like, because we're going to work over the tail. So here's my corner. There's one stitch. That's the middle one, and that's the one I want to join in. So just as before, pull through the loop, 1 chain, cinch it down, drop the tail. Now I'm going to do 2 UK double crochets in my corner, or US single. And I know that means, because I've done that, there'll be 3 on that loop there, that hook, but it doesn't really matter. It's the corner, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to do the last one in there when I get round, just as I did in the previous round, because that way it finishes off dead in the corner. So I'm just going to do 1 in each one along this side. That tail's in the way, so I'm working over it. It'll pop up from time to time, but don't get confused by it. Just keep it down with your finger if you can at the back and work over it. It's so much easier than all the sewing in, which can drive you crazy. Some people like sewing the ends in, but it's one of those things that you've got no choice, but I can't say as I enjoy doing it. Then that's it basically, all the way round, and I'll keep going and show you how I get over the corner. Possibly not the best place to have joined it because this corner's got my tail. Just one in each all the way along. If I get ahead of you, as I said before, hang on a minute, that didn't go in quite right. There we are. Okay, so tried to split on me there. So now I'm at the corner and there's my first stitch. This is my middle one right there. So I've got to go into this one. Now in this middle one I'm going to do 3 for my corner, and then just go in each one, yet another tail to work over. If they're confusing for you, you don't have to work over them. You can just sew them in. That's it. So I'm going to carry on. 1 stitch in every one of the sides, 3 in the corners, but make sure you find that middle stitch and go in the corners, and then carry on, and I will meet back with you when I get back to the start. Okay, so I'm more or less back. Just that one last one to do, and then my last one of my 3, and slip stitch into there. Oops. And then cut my yarn. Now if you're going to sew a seam, you can make a nice long tail, but I'm not going to sew this one. So I just do a chain, cinch it down and pull it through, and as you can see it's dead center of the corner, just as I said, and there's our square. So this tutorial is just for the square, but as I said, there is going to be a few projects with this square, so that will come in handy for that. So thank you for watching. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. You'll be informed when there are new videos. Thank you for watching. Until next time, bye for now.